Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm honored to welcome a very accomplished professional from Canada, Senator Tony Loffreda. Senator Loffreda, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you. Thank you for the opportunity to share and to exchange and to always learn.
Thank you. Thank you. Senator Loffreda is appointed to the Senate of Canada in 2019 by the Governor General of Canada. He's the first Canadian-born senator of Italian descent. He sits on the Standing Senate Committee on National Finance and the Standing Senate Committee on Internal Economy, Budgets and Administration. He also serves as Deputy Chair of the Standing Senate Committee on Banking, Trade and the Economy. Senator Loffreda was the former Vice Chairman and Executive at the Royal Bank of Canada, and given his amazing background, understandably, he's been recognized, felicitated, and awarded several times. Senator, what a privilege it is to talk to you. But let me ask you my first question. Can you tell me about your own journey from being the first Canadian-born senator of Italian descent to your current role?
Well, it's been a long and winding road, like the Beatles used to say, one of my favorite bands. But it's been, many times we focus on the destination, but what counts most is the journey, is to have fun during your career, during your path, during your life. And I've had a lot of fun, and I've had the privilege. I must thank a lot of people because I've had the privilege of being surrounded by great people all the time, and being in touch with them, staying in touch with them, and that keep helping along the way and keep discussing insightful topics of national interest. So it's been a long journey. I mean, my mom came to Canada my mom and my dad came to Canada in 1962. My mom was well advanced in her pregnancy with me at the time. Italy was a war-torn country, like we know, ravaged by war, and we came from an area, San Gregorio Matese, on top of a mountain, a touristic area near Cassino, where Cassino was bombarded and bombed by forces and war-torn and poverty-stricken and what have you, and they decided to come to Canada. And when my mom got here, the first 5-6 years we were sharing apartments with a family, living in, I must say, I've lived the full cycle.
Correct.
From an immigrant family that worked hard to make ends meet, that budget was so important, that responsibility was so important, service to community was so important, integrity was never negotiable. These were values that were instilled in us, values that from very young age, we were told these are values that you must live by. And we still live by these values today. Integrity, never negotiable. Service to the public, to our community. Responsibility, collaboration is one of the values which is so important. Justice, equality, respect. These are extremely important values that we live by. So until 6 years old, we lived in an area, a poorer area of Montreal. At 6, we moved to Ahuntsic. And I love Ahuntsic. Grew up in Ahuntsic, and we went to a high school with 550 graduates, St. Pius X, made many friends along the way, many friends along the way. And life is always about people. And then we needed a job because in the 80s, when we were in university, high unemployment, high inflation, and we needed to work. We needed a job because my dad said, if you're an accountant, if you're a CPA, you'll always have work. And this is why I became a CPA, got into accounting, got into auditing. And in 1990, the banks were looking for expertise because in the past, the banks always promoted within their ranks. And in 1990, business started to get a little more complicated. The banks were looking for expertise. I was one of the first accounting professionals to get into commercial banking. And I said, I'll get in for 1 year or two and come back and be a partner in the accounting firm. I'll create my connections, my contact, grow my network. Network, extremely important to grow our networks. People, always about people.
Correct.
And you know what? I fell in love with banking. I fell in love with banking. And I spent over 3 decades in banking.
Amazing.
And my role now, how I got to the Senate, after almost over 3 decades in banking, we grew up in an era where authority was important, governments were important, institutions were respected. It was the ultimate was to be in government or in an institution. To be a senator was so prestigious in my era. And I remember I was a huge hockey fan. I still am. Montreal Canadiens would win one Stanley Cup after another. We'd say they were the world champions. And there was the captain of the Montreal Canadiens. His name was Serge Savard. They would call him the Senator. And I always told my dad, why do they call him the Senator? He says, because the Senator is where we always go for wisdom, for advice. They have experience. They bring their experience to the discussion, to the table. And the senator is always the one you must consult before taking the final decision. This is why he's called the senator. Amazing. And to me, it was always extremely important. The Senate was an extremely important institution. It still is. And always with ultimate respect, I looked at the Senate. And this is why I decided, after over 3 decades in the financial industry, to give back to our community. Because I've said, and I continue to say, we must all help in business clients thrive, but we have to help our communities prosper. If our communities don't prosper, our clients will not thrive. Nobody will thrive. We need our communities to prosper. And it's my way of giving back, my way of doing what I can to make this country a better country for all.
Very well said. Thank you. And, what powerful messages that you've given. Live by your values. Networks are important. Hard work is critical.
Hard work is critical. It's always about, people always say, they say leadership. How, a lot of young people will ask me, what does it take to be successful? Because at the bank, we had a lot of young people come and start their careers and commence their careers. And I would always say, there's no secret. You have to do your homework. You have to do your homework. And there's one story I always would share with them is Louis Terman, a great American psychologist, did a thesis that lasted 40 years in the 1920s. He took the top 1,600 students, or 1,586 top students in the US universities with the highest marks. He wanted to know how many of those students would succeed in every important element or aspect of their lives at an elite level, a top level. May it be relationships, career, health. Health is important. Financial health, mental health, physical health. And so he followed these top students for 40 years. A thesis, very seldom a thesis lasts 40 years. This thesis lasted 40 years. After 40 years, guess how many of those top students succeeded at the top level? At the top level, had his bar, less than 1% succeeded. Right. So it wasn't about marks. Correct. Then he did the opposite. He took the students that did reach that bar, that did succeed. What did they have? What did they do that the others didn't do? 1 was confidence, 2 was ambition, but most of all, perseverance. And you need the confidence to succeed. You need confidence to move forward. You have to try things. You have to embrace failure at times and move forward. And ambition, you have to have the ambition. But most of all, the perseverance. The perseverance to keep going in difficult times, because in life, in a career, in a relationship, you will have moments where you question yourself, and you have to keep pushing forward. You have to keep doing what you know to do best and keep using your talents for the good. And so confidence, ambition, and perseverance, extremely important. So that's what I would share with my young recruits. And Louis Terman, I love that thesis, and I share it.
I think your thoughts are very important, because a very large percentage of our viewers and listeners are under 34, and this is really incredible wisdom you're sharing with us. Thank you. So my next question for you is that, you sit on the Standing Senate Committee on National Finance. Can you talk a little bit more about the scope of work of this committee and what is the impact it has in your country?
Well, the best work by senators and from the Senate comes from their committees. The committees, senators are accomplished professionals from all backgrounds, from many various industries, and we bring that expertise to the Senate as a check on government. A check on government. So what we do is we look at legislation. A senator in the Senate, we can initiate legislation. We could propose legislation. Many Canadians don't know that. We as senators can propose legislation, and there is numerous bills that are started at the Senate. If it's an S bill, it is initiated by a senator as a private member's bill. We senators on the Finance Committee will look at the budget. We'll look at government expenditures. We'll keep the government to account, hold the government to account. And accountability is so important. Responsibility, accountability, transparency. We'll ask the questions. Why is this money necessary? Why should it be spent? Where is it being spent? How was it spent? And why was it not spent in a better fashion? So sometimes the answers are important, but many, many times the questions are more important as to why was this done? Was it necessary? Will it be necessary? And how can we do it better? And I always say it's not how good we are doing, it's how good we could be doing, how well we could be doing. That's the question. Because many people will say, we're doing well. What's the problem? It's not how well we are doing, it's how well we could be doing or should be doing. And the Finance Committee reviews the government spending. And I'm honored and privileged to sit with a group of individuals on the Finance Committee, experts from various backgrounds, and we hold the government to account. We want accountability, transparency, responsibility, and predictability. Predictability, extremely important also. And predictability comes from consistency, comes from credibility, comes from knowing that we are able to deliver the goods for the Canadian people. And extremely important. The Senate is extremely important. I believe in the institution. I believe in what we do. And just the fact there is a Senate makes the government act differently.
Very well said. And given the fact that you have 35 years of banking and finance experience, that must be serving you really well in all these committees.
You can't buy experience. You can't buy experience. Education is extremely important, but experience is also extremely important. And there's always a story to bring to the table, a story you can tell, an experience you lived, an experience you can share. And this is what's important with the Senate of Canada. It's accomplished professionals with many years of experience in their particular industries, bringing it and sharing it for the benefit of Canadians, for the benefit of the Senate, for the benefit of Parliament. And just listening to many, many senators, I learn every day. I keep learning every day. Learning has to be a lifelong journey. I keep learning every day. And yes, that's important. The experience is important many times. And it's not just about being a politician and saying a great speech. It's about what have you learned? What mistakes have you made along the way? What has worked? What hasn't worked? What can we do better? How well can we perform? Not how well we are performing. How well can we perform? These are all important elements that you can't teach in a classroom. And I'm privileged, honored to be able to share this every single day with Canadians.
Fantastic. Senator, you're also known for your philanthropic efforts. What motivates you to give back to the community?
Well, I've said it. I always often used to say, we have to help our clients thrive, but we must help our communities prosper. And I remember initially when I was a young professional, I remember the first fundraiser I did, the first fundraisers. And if I mention one organization, I'll have to mention I was sitting on 21 boards before I came to the Senate. I resigned from each and every board because I want no conflict of interest. I retired from RBC because I just want to be a good senator and with the sole purpose of being a good senator. And I remember after I did that first fundraiser, how I felt a natural high. The people we helped. I remember looking at those, and I always say a good conversation is 80% looking in the eye of the individual you are talking to. 80%. And 80%, a good conversation is 80% listening and talking and looking the person in the eye and creating that instant intimacy that we must create, not just talk about overall issues, instant intimacy that we must create. And what was extremely important was when I looked at the people that we were helping, looked into their eyes, you see that satisfaction, and you say, wow, we contributed into helping a hospital, helping a university, helping a school, helping an association, a medical association, and you follow for years and you see the progress, and it just grew on me. It grew on me that not only is our business important, but helping people. It's always about people. And I said it and I'll say it again. It's always about people. And what can you do for the people that surround you, the people in your environment? And leaders create their environment, create their own environment. Leadership is selfless. Leadership is selfless. Today, we often forget that leadership is selfless. It's not about us. It's about everybody else. And this is why I got into many philanthropic endeavors. And I can tell you, I've with universities, with hospitals, with medical associations, I've had so much fun. And I could say it's been the most fun I've had was not working. And people would think you do this full time it wasn't full time. We'd have a full day of work, and then at night we would do our philanthropic endeavors, and it was a lot of fun. It was great fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all that you're doing for your community. I wish there were a lot more people like you who were giving back like you are doing. But, Senator, you're also a frequent speaker on economic and community issues. I'd love to get your perspective on what are some of the pressing challenges you see today.
World peace. World peace.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking what I see around the world, and no country can prosper if there is not a global peace, world peace, and humans should look after humans.
Correct.
We should make that a priority, an objective to have world peace. And we have 195 countries in the world, and right now there's more than 50 ongoing wars. Is that normal? I look at any listener, is that normal? Should we not do something about that? And so world peace is first and foremost. Secondly is poverty. Correct. I think as the global population grows, and I take a lot of pride in my role as chairman of the Interparliamentary Network of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund for Canada. I take that role very seriously. And I think global poverty has to be addressed. We have to attack poverty in the world. And I'm happy to say that Canada's poverty rate is 10% or below 10% at times, depending which year or how we measure it. I think we have to lower that, keep lowering that. And it's not only about wealth distribution, because it's easy to distribute wealth. It's about wealth creation. How do we create wealth? Because you can't tax and spend forever, because you have to have some incentive for the entrepreneur. Wealth is always created by the entrepreneur. The entrepreneur, I remember when I was in banking, the entrepreneur could lose everything he owns every single day of his life. He can lose that. So it's extremely important to incentivize investment, incentivize innovation. So we can't tax and spend forever. We can't do that forever. We have to create wealth. And as we create wealth, we have to address poverty. We have to address global well-being, not just our country, but global well-being. We have to start at home first, obviously. And it breaks my heart when I go across Canada and I see the homeless, and it breaks my heart. We have to address those issues and tackle those issues. And how do we do it? By creating economic prosperity. Economic prosperity is a challenge, an everyday challenge. Like I said, it's not how well we're doing, it's how well we could be doing, how well we should be doing. And we have to address those challenges. And how do we address those challenges? Listening to the people, listening to the people. What will motivate entrepreneurs to invest? What motivates Canadians to keep going, to invest in their companies, to create wealth, to create jobs? And how do we do that better? And this is the biggest challenge. So if we look at peace, poverty, economic prosperity, these are huge challenges that sometimes don't make me sleep at night, and believe it or not. And I guess as we get older, we worry about our children and what we're leaving behind and the legacy we're leaving. And that's so important. And that's not our legacy, the legacy we're leaving as a country, as a nation, as a global nation. What legacy? We want to leave a better world for our kids to live in. And for our grandchildren to live in. Mind you, I don't have grandkids yet, but hopefully one day I will. I'm looking forward to it, and God willing.
Oh, it'll be a delightful experience. I've just got a 2-year-old granddaughter, and she's changed my life completely.
There, congratulations. That's what life is about. I said it's about people. It's about family too, about friends and family.
Absolutely.
Extremely important.
Absolutely. And I've got time for 2 more questions for you. And these are for you now personally. Given the amazing journey you've had, what are some of the key leadership lessons you have learned throughout your career in the corporate world and as a political figure?
I've, if I were to say one thing, what helped me most in my career is creating a network. Is, a friend is a huge word. Friendship is a huge word. But creating a network of great acquaintances, business acquaintances. And it's about giving, not taking. It's about being a giver. It's about people. Why do people want to reach out to you? Because you can add value to whatever they're doing. You can add value to their day. You can add value to their business. You can add value to their environment. Leaders create their own environment, and it's creating that environment with a network of successful people that surround you, a network of people that want you to succeed, not that people, because many times, you have to be very careful about your network, about who you bring into your network, your environment, and the leaders create their own environment. And leadership, many people will think leadership is about being nice. I have to be nice. Leadership is not about being nice or not being nice. Leadership is about being fair, but about being strong. You have to be strong as a leader. You can't be a weak leader. You have to be strong. So leadership is being fair and being strong. And the first role of a leader, today especially, with today's generations, the first role would be to be loved and respected. Sometimes you can accomplish that. Sometimes you can't be loved by everybody, but you have to be respected. And why are you respected? Because you will be fair and you will be strong. And that is leadership. And the leadership lesson I learned many times, I remember in my initial years, I started and people say, wow, you have a great network and you know a lot of people and it helps accomplish your business objectives. I went out to a meeting last night. I gave out 50 business cards. I think I covered a lot of bases. I said, no, that's not the way of doing things. You should have obtained the list of the people that were there, know who you wanted to speak to, and speak to 5 people and create that instant intimacy. Instant intimacy, talking about real things. So what do we talk about? Form, F-O-R-M. First, start with family. What is the most valuable to all of us? It's our family. Occupation. What is occupying your mind? What are you concerned about?
Correct.
What are you doing right now? Recreation. What are you doing for fun? So you have to make that initial contact, that meeting, fun. What are you doing about recreation? Where are you going this summer? What will you be doing this weekend? And last, the M stands for money, business. Last is business. By the way, I've got a project going on. I'd like to discuss that with you further. So it's about creating that instant intimacy, form, family, occupation, recreation, money. If you don't know what to talk about, that's what you need to bring up in that specific order. And that instant intimacy, when you leave there, that person you met could meet 50 people or 100 people that night, but he's going to remember who you are because he's going to know. And many times we think it's talking about ourselves. No, people enjoy most. What do they enjoy most? Talking about themselves. Most people enjoy most, and there's nothing wrong with that. People enjoy most talking about themselves, sharing about their challenges, their accomplishments. Just listen. A good call, a good meeting, 80% listening, 80% listening. Listen, and maybe put in one thing or two about yourself that he'll remember. I've got 2 kids, and one of them is a great film star. The other's a CPA. And some things they'll remember. I've been married for 40 years. That's my biggest success, my marriage. So my relationships, that is my biggest success. If somebody were to ask me, what is the accomplishment you're most proud of? It's my relationship with my spouse, 40 years. Today, she loves me more than when I met her. She's my best friend. My relationship with my children, my family, my intimate family, my relationship with my friends, my relationship with my colleagues, my professional colleagues, other senators, other members of parliament. And that, like I said, if there's one leadership lesson, no matter how skilled you are, how bright you are, what will move you up in an organization, guess what it is? Your ability to get along with people, your ability to be loved, your ability to be respected, your ability to say, Senator Loffreda, when I talk to him after the conversation, I always feel good. I may not always agree with him. But he brings insightful discussions, not personal attacks, what we see in politics today, awful, not personal attacks. But if I disagree with a policy, I will tell you, I disagree with your policy. I disagree with your measure. And that is what is important, and not the personal attacks. Because if people are there, if you reached a certain level of government, and I've met so many over the course of my career, I met opposition, I met government, I met senators, I've been privileged and honored for a little guy like me to where we started to be able to do that. And I can tell you, they have gotten there, not all of them, because they're very bright, accomplished individuals. All of them. So let's talk about policies. Let's talk about measures. Let's talk about how we can improve the lives of global citizens, of Canadians, and not attack ourselves personally. Why do we need to do that? Why? And this is why when I grew up, we had the ultimate respect for our institutions. A senator, my God, a senator was, a prime minister. My God, we admired those people. We grew up, my dad taught me that you listen to authority. If the professor punished you with 100 lines, I'm going to give you 100 more lines. I'm not going to go argue with your professor. I'm going to do what he did. You deserve it. And if he told you that you have to go into the corner, that was never my case. I was a geek and studied and read too much, and I should have had a lot more fun. But anyway, but you see where I'm going with that.
Absolutely.
Authority was so important, and we have to get back to that. We have to start respecting our institutions, respecting our government. There's an election every 4 or 5 years, whenever it may be. That's the time to make your vote count.
Absolutely.
But
Very well said. And on that note, Senator, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own incredible journey. Speaking to you, one would never have realized that when you moved as an immigrant, and you were not born at that time, but when your parents moved as immigrants from Italy and to where you are today, I can only say this, I'm sure there is a book in the making if you haven't already written one. Thank you for speaking to me about the role of a senator, the importance of a senator, and all the great work senators can do and are doing. I just love the way you so easily outlined how values, network, and hard work were so critical for success. You spoke about world peace, well-being, and health as critical for our world today. You also gave us some amazing leadership lessons. And finally, I loved your acronym FORM, which is family, occupation, recreation, and money or business. Thank you so much,
Money
sir, for
lasts.
speaking to me.
Business always lasts. Money always lasts. And I'm
Absolutely.
proud and privileged to be a senator where we correct legislation, amend legislation, initiate legislation to make lives better for all Canadians. And I'm so proud to be able to do that. The best work of the Senate gets done through our committees where we study, evaluate topics of national interest, and hold the government to account. Correct errors, omissions, hold the government to account. Such an important institution, which I'm proud and privileged to be part of. And I'm glad to have shared all that with you today. And
I'm
thank you for
grateful
the
you spoke to
opportunity.
me. Thank you again. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.